Hi, welcome to my quilting beehive. I'm Michelle, and today I'm here to help you with the maple leaf block that we have in our 2025 Colchester Mill Marvelous Mystery Quilt. I'm going to start by showing you a little bit about making this pointy part, which we're going to do with foundation piecing. It's also called paper piecing. It's just 3 pieces. It's a simple one. It's a great way to learn paper piecing if you've never done it before, and give it a little try, see if you like it. And then I'll also show you some tips for your stem. The rest of the block is made with folded corners, snowballed corners, which we've done before. These are just smaller pieces, and I think you'll be ready to do those on your own. When you're foundation piecing, you need to start with your template, your paper. I have a second file attached to your pattern that has it set up with 2 to a page, so you can send it right through your printer and print it out so you can have them copied and you won't have to trace them and try to do it that way. When you print it on the thinnest paper you can. They make special foundation paper you can purchase. You want it to be like really cheap copy paper, or this is newsprint paper, a thin paper that's easy to sew through and won't damage your machine needles and easy to tear away. So you're going to cut them apart so you have one foundation template for one leaf. It has 3 pieces. Piece 1 is fabric 4, piece 2 and 3 are fabric 2, which is the background. You're going to need your pieces as you cut them, and they're in your cutting instructions, the sizes of them. And you're going to have those 3 pieces. The first thing I like to do is I like to make a fold on the line between piece 1 and piece 2. And the bold numbers are those ones right there. And I'm just going to fold on the line. You can fold it either direction, this way it's easier to see. I'm just going to make a crease so I know where that line is when I'm lining up my fabric. That's the first line you're going to use. You're going to take fabric 1, which in my case is my red fabric. Piece 1, which is fabric 4. Piece 1, fabric 4, my red fabric. And you're going to put it on the back of your pattern, wrong side of the fabric touching the back of the pattern. And you're going to line it up on there so it has about a 1/4 inch between piece 1 and piece 2. So you line it right up there. You can stick a pin in that so you can make sure it won't move around on you. When you put the pin in, don't put it anywhere near that line because you're going to be sewing on that line. So that pin is just holding it in place right there. When you work on foundation piecing, you're going to be sewing through the paper on the line. But our good block is going to be on the back of this. So now I'm taking one of the fabric 2 pieces for piece 2, and it's going to end up over here when we sew it, but you have to put it right sides together. So I'm flipping it over and putting it on there, and I'm making sure it is lined up about a 1/4 inch overlap between the 2 pieces. I can take that pin and I'm going to hold both pieces together like that, so they're there. So you can see the front of the paper has just the pin showing. The back of the paper, we have the first piece and the second piece lined up on that seam line with a 1/4 inch overhang, stuck together, and both pieces come across the whole thing. Now I'm going to take this over to my machine. When you're ready to sew, you want to set up your machine with your stitch length smaller than usual. That's going to give you a perforated line because later the paper does need to be removed. And a nice tight stitch line will help you rip the paper easily. When you sew, you're going to sew only on the line between piece 1 and piece 2, and you're just going to sew right on that line from point to where it ends right there. I'm lining up my foot has the crack right in the middle there, and I can see the line is centered right on there, and I'm going to sew right on the line. I do a little back stitch, and that's just so when I'm ripping off the paper, I don't rip the stitches out. So I am doing a back stitch there, and I'm just going to sew right along that line. And again, so I don't rip it, I'm doing a back stitch right there. And there you go. My stitch line goes right from end to end on that line, right between the 2 pieces on the back of the paper. My 1/4 inch, you can see it was a little crooked, a little smaller here, a little bigger here. That is okay. Don't worry about that. We will trim that up in a minute. Now, because that line was crooked, I am going to trim it. You could, if it was pretty straight, you could leave that one. I'm going to trim it to make sure there's not too much under there. I'm going to flip this over, fold on that line that I already had on there. And I'm going to show you a special tool called an add a quarter ruler. It comes in a short length and a long length. And what's interesting about it is it has a little lip that's a 1/4 inch, and it'll catch on the paper so you know exactly where you need to trim. So you can slide that on there. Oh, I'm not too far off, just a little bit there. Slide it on there, make it catch against the paper, and that will give you a 1/4 inch. If you don't have one of those rulers, you can use any ruler and put a 1/4 inch line even with your paper. It's important that you don't trim even with the paper. You want to have a 1/4 inch of seam allowance. You don't want to cut that off, so make sure you have that on there. I'm going to put my add a quarter back on there. And just there was a little bit. We'll just trim off that little bit so it's straighter. Okay, next step is ironing. When you're foundation piecing, you're always going to iron towards the piece you just added. So I'm going to take the piece number 2 that I just added. I'm going to use my fingers to get it in place, and then I'm going to gently press it over that way. There you go. Once you have it pressed, you bring it back to your cutting table, and you are going to take your foundation. We have piece 1 and piece 2 already sewn on. Then we're going to get ready for piece 3. You're going to fold on that paper line between piece 2 and piece 3. Fold right on the line. And now we're going to use that add a quarter ruler again to trim, leaving a 1/4 inch of the extra fabric. I did have you cut your pieces large, so you will have a scrap there. But it's just when you're learning to foundation piece, you really want your pieces to be big enough, and you don't want to short yourself. So always cut a little bigger than you think you need. So now my back looks like this. You can see the red has the point that we're going to be looking for, and we've got one of our side pieces sewn on. Next, you're going to line up your next side piece over here and put it on. And it's good to check to make sure that your pieces are going to cover from end to end. So I have it all the way down here to the edge of the paper on this end. And that way I know it won't get cut off. I have it on there. If you need to stick a pin in there, you can. And then bring it to your sewing machine, and we're going to sew on that line. After you've sewn between the line between piece 1 and piece 3, you're going to bring it to your iron. And you'll take that piece and you'll press it And so we do have all our pieces sewn together, so the next step is to trim it into the square that we need. Once you have it all done, make sure your fabric is all flat underneath it, all unfolded, nothing's tucked under, and put it down so you can see your whole block. And the cut line is going to be the dotted line. The finished block line is the solid line. You can use any ruler to trim these. If you don't have a 4.5 inch square, you can use any size ruler. If you have a 4.5 inch square, you can lay that on there and you can trim all 4 sides at once, whichever is easier for you. I'll do one side at a time just so you can see. I am lining it up on the dotted line, and I'm just going to cut. There's a lump at that in there. There we go. Okay, so I cut one side. Rotate it so you can always cut right-handed. Or left-handed if you're left-handed. Cut this next side. Make sure you don't let your ruler slip. When it's on the paper, it is a little slippery, so you will have to hold it a little more secure because the paper doesn't have anything to give you grip. And then you cut your last dotted line like that. And now you'll have a perfect 4.5 inch square with your point that you need for your maple leaf. Once you have it all trimmed and ready to use in your block, you do need to remove the paper because you don't want paper in your quilt later. Anytime you're doing paper piecing or foundation piecing, remove the pieces in reverse order. So remove number 3, then 2, then 1. On this one, there's only 3 pieces, so it's not a big deal which way we go. But if you had a lot of pieces in there, it allows those pieces to be removed more freely. Crease that folded line, give it a good crease, and you should be able to Tear it off just like it's perforated from all those nice tight stitches you put in it. And then repeat with piece number 2. I find it's easier to grab the larger side. There we go. And then piece number 1 is loose now, and you can pull it out, and I did tear it right there. And now your block is ready to go. Now I just want to give you a couple little pointers for when you're making your stem part of your maple leaf. When you're putting your pieces together, you want to find the center of each side, and you can do that by folding it in half. And you want to center that piece so the centers line up right here. Don't worry about matching end to end. The red fabric on mine, the stem piece, is a little longer, and that's okay. You want to match the center points on that. So with a 1/4 inch seam line. When you bring it to your iron, you want your seam allowance to go towards the stem. That kind of gives it a little extra dimension, thickens it up a little, makes the stem pop. So I'm going to bring this to the iron and press it that way. Once you have it pressed, you're going to add the second triangle. And it's very important that the points line up so that the center, the point of this one lines up with the point of that one. And that way we know it's centered and it's going to be in the same position, so it'll be square when we finish it up. So you're going to sew with a 1/4 inch seam on this side now, and just make sure that those 2 points are in line with each other. After you sew your seam with 1/4 inch seam, you're going to press it, and all your seams end up filling that whole thickness of the stem, and I like the dimension that it gives it, so they're all filled in there. Now we're just going to square this up to trim off the extra red fabric so it is not too much. What's important when you're trimming is to line up that center diagonal so you're trimming it square. It should be down the center of that stem pretty well. And it's going to be a 3-inch unit that we're making. And we're mostly just trimming off that little bit of red on the end, like that. And then you can flip it around and get your 3-inch by 3-inch square and trim off those 2 little ends to make your stem unit. Once you have all your units together, then you're going to lay out your block as shown in the pattern and put together your maple leaf. It ends up you making a 4-patch. You add pieces to your stem to make this unit, and you'll have your 4-patch. Thank you for watching our video this month. I hope you have a good time making your maple leaf blocks. Remember, this month you do have a choice. If you don't want to try the foundation piecing or make the maple leaf blocks, there is an alternate block, and I will have a separate video on that. If you're not participating in the Colchester Mill Marvelous Mystery, it's not too late to join. We're about halfway through, and you can join in now and catch up with plenty of time to finish your quilt by the end of the year. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.